The departure board flipped at 6:47 p.m. I know the exact time because I had been staring at it for 11 minutes, willing the word delayed to stay exactly where it was. It had been there since 5:30. I'd told myself delayed was fine. Delayed meant I still had a flight. Delayed meant I was still going home. Then it flipped. Cancelled. One word. White letters on black. And just like that, Christmas Eve was over before it started. My name is Ruth Calloway. I'm 53 years old, and I am not a woman who cries in airports. I've missed connections in Denver, been rerouted through Atlanta in the thunderstorm, once spent 6 hours on a tarmac in Phoenix eating a granola bar I'd found at the bottom of my purse from God knows when. I handle things. That's what I do. That's what I've always done. So when the board flipped, I didn't cry. I stood up, walked to the gate counter, and waited in the line that had formed instantly. 12 people, all with the same tight jaw, the same phone already out, the same look that said, I have somewhere to be and you are standing between me and it. The gate agent, young woman, name tag said Priya, eyes already apologizing before she opened her mouth, told me the next available flight was December 26th, 2 days away. Weather system moving up the coast. Nothing she could do. December 26th, I said. Yes, ma'am, I'm so sorry. I nodded, picked up my carry-on, careful the way I'd been careful with it all day, and walked back to my seat. And that was when it hit me. Not the cancellation, not the 2 days, not the logistics of it. It was the silence of my phone. Everyone around me was already calling someone. The man to my left. Honey, I'm not going to make it tonight. I know. A woman 2 rows over, already crying, already being talked through it by whoever was on the other end. A teenager, texting so fast his thumbs were a blur, and even from where I sat, I could see the responses coming back immediately. Someone waiting, someone there, someone who knew he was stranded and was already figuring out how to fix it. I looked at my phone, 1 bar of battery, and no one to call. Not because I don't have people. I have people. I have friends, I have colleagues, I have a neighbor who has my spare key. But the person I would have called, the first person, the automatic person, the one whose number I still hadn't removed from my favorites even though she'd been gone for 6 months, she wasn't there anymore. I sat back down in the plastic airport chair. I was still holding the boarding pass. Flight 2247, seat 14B. Departure, 6:15 p.m. Useless. A document for a thing that no longer existed. If you've ever sat in a crowded place and felt completely alone, not lonely, not sad, just alone, in the specific way that has no fix, then you already know what the next few minutes felt like. And if you've ever had a year like the one I'd just had, you know why a canceled flight on Christmas Eve could feel like the last small thing after a very long list of large things. I'm not usually the kind of person who talks to strangers, but I wasn't usually this person either. If this story is finding you on a hard night, I'm glad you're here. Hit that like button if you've ever held yourself together just long enough to get somewhere. And subscribe, because I have more stories like this one, and some of them end better than they start. Drop a number in the comments. 1-4, I would have called a hotel. 2-4, I would have stayed. You'll understand why I'm asking in a few minutes. Now let me tell you about the man who was sitting 3 seats to my right, who had been there the entire time, and who hadn't moved either. This was supposed to be a simple trip. Fly in on the 24th, spend 2 days going through the house, sign what needed to be signed with the estate attorney on the 26th, fly home on the 27th. Clean, contained, manageable. That's how I'd written it in my planner. That's how I'd been treating the entire last 6 months. Like if I kept everything inside a planner, inside a schedule, inside a list of tasks with checkboxes, then none of it would be allowed to get too large. My mother died in June, congestive heart failure. She was 78. It wasn't a shock exactly. She'd been slowing down for 2 years, and we both knew it. And there had been conversations, real ones, the kind you have when you're both pretending you're just being practical. But knowing something is coming doesn't mean you're ready when it arrives. It just means you've had longer to build the wall. I built a very good wall. I handled the funeral arrangements. I handled the paperwork. I handled the phone calls to relatives who hadn't called her in years but suddenly had a lot of feelings. I handled my brother, who flew in for 4 days, cried loudly, and then flew back to his life, leaving me with the house and the estate and the 11-year-old cat named Gerald, who didn't understand why his person wasn't coming home. I found Gerald a new home in August. I cried more about that than I had about anything else, which tells you something about the wall. The house was the last thing. Her house. The one she'd lived in for 31 years. The one I grew up in after 12. The one that still had her handwriting on a piece of masking tape inside the kitchen cabinet that said, "Ruth's mugs. Do not use," because I'd claimed 2 of them at 16 and she'd never moved them. I'd been putting off going back. I told myself it was logistics, distance, work. The estate attorney had been patient. The truth was, I didn't know who I was going to be when I walked through that door, and she wasn't there. So I packed a carry-on. 1 change of clothes, toiletries, the folder with the documents, and 1 other thing, carefully wrapped in a dish towel, tucked in the side pocket with a rubber band around it. My mother's Christmas ornament. A glass bluebird, hand-painted, maybe 4 inches tall. She'd had it since before I was born. Every year, without fail, it went on the tree first. Not at the top, not in the center, just slightly left of middle, on a branch she always said had good light. I don't know why I brought it. I told myself I'd put it on her tree one last time before the house sold. That felt like the right thing to do. I didn't want to check it, couldn't risk it. So I carried it, careful, all day. And now I was sitting in gate 47 of a half-empty airport on Christmas Eve with a dead phone, a useless boarding pass, and a glass bluebird in my bag. And the one person who would have known exactly what to say was a contact in my phone I still hadn't been able to rename. It still said, "Mom, do not delete." I'd put that there 8 months ago, in October, when I realized I kept almost calling her, kept going to the favorites and stopping myself just in time. The note was supposed to be a warning. Don't press it, she won't answer. But I couldn't delete the name, not yet. Across the gate, a family was taking photos in front of the window, the tarmac behind them dark and empty, the lights of the airport making everything look softer than it was. The kids were laughing, the parents looked tired, in the good way, the way that means you've been somewhere and you're going home. A gate agent walked past me, made brief eye contact, and looked away. I wasn't a problem she could solve. Just a woman, sitting alone, very still, holding a boarding pass she hadn't put down yet. If you've ever lost someone and found yourself just going through the motions, keeping it together on the outside while something inside has just gone very quiet, leave a candle emoji in the comments. Just one. You don't have to say anything else. I'll know what you mean. And I want you to know, I see you. The man 3 seats to my right had a duffel bag at his feet and both hands resting on his knees. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't reading. He was just sitting there, the same way I was sitting there, in the particular stillness of someone who has nowhere better to be. I noticed him the way you notice something that matches your own frequency. I didn't say anything. Neither did he. Not yet. He moved first. Not toward me. He just reached into the front pocket of his duffel bag, pulled out a phone charger and set it on the seat between us, without a word. Then he looked at my phone, which was sitting face up on my knee, the low battery warning visible from 6 feet, and said, "Airport outlets behind you, left side of the column." That was it. No introduction, no "are you okay?" No, "you look like you could use some help," which is the kind of thing people say when they want credit for noticing. Just, "The outlet is there, here is a charger, do what you want with that information." I turned around. There was an outlet, exactly where he said. I plugged in my phone, sat back down, left 1 seat between us. He didn't seem to expect anything in return. He'd gone back to sitting the way he'd been sitting, hands on knees, looking at the middle distance, not performing patience, just actually being patient, which is a different thing entirely. His name, I found out about 20 minutes later, was Daniel Worth. He was 64. He'd driven to the airport to pick up his daughter, who was flying in from Portland for Christmas. He'd been waiting at arrivals for 40 minutes when she called to tell him she wasn't coming. Her husband's mother had taken a fall. They needed to stay. He said this the way people say things when they've already processed them, not with bitterness, not asking for sympathy, just stating what had happened. So you drove 40 minutes to an airport for nothing, I said. Not for nothing, he said. I had a good parking spot. I looked at him. He wasn't smiling exactly, but there was something in his expression that was close to it. The dry, quiet kind of humor that doesn't announce itself, that you have to be paying attention to catch. I almost laughed. I surprised myself with that. He reached into his bag again and held out a granola bar, still without looking at me directly, like he was offering it to the general vicinity of a person who might need it. I have 3 more, he said. It was a long drive. I took it. We sat there for a while, not talking, and it was one of those silences that isn't uncomfortable. It's just 2 people existing in the same space without needing to fill it. I hadn't had a silence like that in a long time. Most silences since June had felt like they were waiting for something, pressing against me, asking me to do something with them. This one didn't. My phone came back to life. I checked hotels. The 2 nearest the airport were full. The third had 1 room left at $340 a night, non-refundable. I stared at that number for a moment. Daniel glanced over, not nosily, just the natural drift of attention when someone next to you goes very still. Everything okay? Hotels are full. He nodded slowly, looked at his duffel bag, looked back at the gate. Then he said it. I've got a spare room. House is 40 minutes out. Nothing fancy, but it's not $340. I turned and looked at him properly for the first time. He met my eyes. Steady. No lean in, no performance of reassurance. His hands were still visible, resting on his knees. And he looked like a man who had made a practical offer and was now waiting to see if it was useful, not like a man who needed me to say yes. I don't know you, I said. No, he agreed. You understand why that's completely reasonable, he said. Hotel's probably fine. The room's there if the math doesn't work out. And then he stopped talking, didn't push, didn't explain himself further, just went back to sitting. Across the terminal, a young woman, maybe late 20s, traveling alone, headphones around her neck, had been watching us in the unfocused way people watch things in airports when they have nothing else to do. When I caught her eye, she gave me the smallest nod. Not encouraging, not warning, just, I see you, I see him, and from where I'm sitting it looks all right. I don't know why that mattered, but it did. I looked down at the boarding pass I was still holding. At some point in the last hour, I'd folded it in half without realizing. I folded it again, put it in my coat pocket. I didn't throw it away. I'm not sure I can explain that. I just wasn't ready to. 40 minutes, I said. 42 in traffic. There won't be traffic tonight. I picked up my carry-on. Careful. The way I'd been careful with it all day. Okay, I said. He stood up, picked up his duffel, and we walked out of gate 47 together. 2 strangers who had nowhere else to be on Christmas Eve. And neither of us said another word until we reached the car. Here's what I want to ask you, and I mean this genuinely. Would you have gone? A stranger, an airport, Christmas Eve. Would you have gotten in that car? Tell me in the comments. There's no wrong answer. I just want to know what kind of person you think you are, and whether this story changes that by the end. He was right about the traffic. The highway was almost empty, just the 2 of us and the occasional truck, headlights cutting through a night that had gone very dark very fast. It had started to snow around exit 12. Not heavily, just the first few flakes, the kind that look intentional, like the sky is trying to make a point. Daniel drove the way he sat, steadily, without commentary, without filling the air. The radio was on low, some station playing instrumental Christmas music that was quiet enough to ignore. I watched the snow and didn't think about very much. I had told him my name by then. He'd told me about his daughter. Her name was Claire. She lived in Portland with her husband and their 2 kids, and Daniel had not seen the grandchildren since Thanksgiving. He said this without complaint, just information. I asked if his wife would be home. There was a pause, small, the kind that tells you something before the words do. Margaret passed away in January, he said. 11 months ago. I looked at him. "I'm sorry," I said. And I meant it, but I also heard myself say it the way people say it. The automatic kindness that has been said so many times it is worn smooth. And I wanted to say something better, something truer, but I didn't have it. He nodded once. It was fast. That was the mercy of it. We didn't talk for a few minutes after that. His house was small, white, with green shutters, on a road that had 3 other houses on it and nothing else. A porch light was on. He'd left it on when he drove to the airport, and something about that detail, the porch light burning for a pickup that never happened, made my chest feel tight in a way I hadn't expected. Inside, clean, lived in, quiet. The kind of quiet that's different from empty. A house that had been full once and was learning a new version of itself. In the living room, a Christmas tree, maybe 5 feet tall, artificial, the kind that comes in sections, half decorated, lights on, a handful of ornaments on the bottom branches, and then nothing. The top 2/3 bare, the remaining ornaments in a cardboard box open on the floor beside it. He saw me looking. "I started it last week," he said. "Kept thinking Claire was coming. Figured I'd finish it with her." He said it plainly. No performance of sadness, just the fact of it. I set my carry-on down by the couch. He showed me the spare room, small, a window that faced the road, a quilt on the bed that had been washed recently, I could tell, a nightstand with a lamp. He'd made the bed, I realized. Not recently. It had been made and waiting, the way people keep a room when they still believe someone might come. I went back out to the living room and stood there for a moment. And then I did something I hadn't planned on doing. I picked up my carry-on, put my coat back on. I don't know what I was going to do. Call another hotel? Find a rideshare? Something. I felt suddenly like I was intruding on something private, on a grief that wasn't mine, in a house that belonged to a man I'd known for less than 2 hours. And who was I to be here? And what was I doing? And he came back from the kitchen and stopped when he saw me standing there with my bag. He didn't ask where I was going. He just looked at the carry-on, and then at me, and then he said, "The ornament will be safer on a real tree than in that bag." I went still. He'd seen it. Through the zipper gap. I'd never fully closed it, the dish towel adding too much bulk. He'd seen the edge of the cloth, the shape of something small and fragile being carried with too much care for it to be ordinary. He hadn't said anything about it until now. "It's my mother's," I said. My voice came out lower than I expected. "I figured it was something like that." "She died in June." He nodded. Not with surprise, not with the particular alertness people get when they're about to say the right thing. Just with recognition. The nod of a person who knows what June can do to a person by December. "I was going to put it on her tree," I said. "Back home. The house is being sold. I don't know what I thought." "You thought it deserved one more Christmas," he said. I didn't answer. He walked to the cardboard box on the floor, picked it up, and set it on the coffee table. Then he sat down in the armchair across from the tree, leaving the couch, and the box, and the half-decorated tree, just there, available, not pushed on me. Outside, the snow was picking up. I checked rideshare on my now charged phone. Surge pricing, 4 times the normal rate, and the nearest driver was 31 minutes away. I looked at the tree. I looked at the box. I took my coat off. I don't know how to explain what happened next, except to say that it happened the way things happen when you stop managing them. I sat down on the couch. I unzipped the carry-on. I unwrapped the dish towel, carefully, the way I'd been doing everything carefully for 6 months. And I took out the glass bluebird. It caught the tree lights immediately. That deep blue, the painted wing detail, the thin gold wire it hung from. 4 inches of something my mother had carried through 30-some-odd Christmases, through moves and winters and the ordinary accumulation of a life. Daniel looked at it from his chair. "That's beautiful," he said. "She bought it before I was born," I said. "I don't even know where she got it. I never asked." That hit me in a strange place. All the things I hadn't asked. All the questions I'd been saving for later, for when I had more time, for when we both weren't busy, for some version of the future that had closed in June without my permission. I held the ornament for a moment, and then I stood up and I walked to the tree. I found a branch slightly left of middle. The light there was good. I hung it. And that was when it started. Not dramatically, not with any warning, just the quiet collapse of something that had been held too tightly for too long. My eyes filled, and I stood there looking at a glass bluebird on a stranger's Christmas tree, and I cried. Not the polite kind, the kind that comes from the bottom of something. Daniel didn't move. He didn't say anything. He didn't come over and put his hand on my shoulder, or offer me a tissue, or do any of the things that people do when they're uncomfortable with someone else's grief and need to make it stop. He just stayed in his chair. And somehow, that was exactly right. I cried for probably 3 minutes. Then I sat back down on the couch and pressed the heels of my hands against my eyes and took a breath that came out shaky and uneven. I haven't done that, I said. Since the funeral. I know, he said. You don't know me. No, he said. But I know what it looks like when someone's been carrying something a long time. I looked at him. He was looking at the tree. At the bluebird specifically, I thought. Margaret had a thing she always put up first, he said. A ceramic angel. Terrible-looking thing. She'd had it since her first apartment. I used to tease her about it. He paused. I put it up before I started the tree this year. Before I did anything else. We sat with that for a while. I asked him about her. He told me. Not everything, the way you don't with someone you've just met, but enough. How they'd been married 38 years. How she'd been the one who remembered things. Dates and names, and where he'd put his keys. And how the house had a particular kind of disorder now that wasn't mess exactly, but the absence of her system. How he'd almost canceled Christmas entirely and then thought about Claire coming and started the tree. And then Claire hadn't come. I told him about my mother, about Gerald the cat, about the masking tape on the kitchen cabinet that said, Ruth's mugs, do not use. About the voice memo I'd found on my phone 2 months after she died, her calling to tell me about something on television, nothing important, just her voice in the ordinary way of a Tuesday afternoon, and how I'd listened to it 9 times in a row sitting in my car in a parking garage because I couldn't go anywhere else. He listened the way people listen when they're not waiting for their turn to talk. At some point he made tea. I'm not a tea person, but I drank it. We moved the ornament box between us and finished decorating the tree. Him handing, me hanging, neither of us making a project of it, just doing the thing until it was done. His phone buzzed around 9:30. He looked at it, a small shift in his expression, something releasing. Claire, he said. He answered. I could hear her voice, not the words, just the warmth of it. Then she must have heard me set down a mug because she said something that changed her register. And Daniel said, someone who needed a place to land. A pause on her end, then quieter. Good, Dad, good. He hung up, set the phone down, looked at the tree. The bluebird was lit from behind now, the branch it was on catching the light at an angle that made the painted wing look almost three-dimensional. I had the boarding pass in my coat pocket. I hadn't thought about it in hours. Most of the story is true. I've shaped a few details, timing, names, the way certain conversations went, for the sake of telling it clearly. Some of it is reconstructed from memory, and memory isn't a transcript. But the glass bluebird is real. The granola bar wrapper is real. And what happened to me in that house on Christmas Eve, the thing I'd been not doing for 6 months, that is the truest part of all. An AI helped me find the words for it. The feeling behind them is mine. What I want to ask you, and you don't have to answer, but I hope you will, is this. When was the last time you let yourself stop carrying something? Not solved it, not fixed it. Just set it down for one night, and let it be heavy without you holding it up. If you know that feeling, leave it in the comments. I think more people need to hear that they're not the only ones white-knuckling through their own lives. I slept better that night than I had in months. I don't know why that surprised me. Maybe because the room was strange, the pillow unfamiliar, the sounds of the house different from my own. But I think it was something simpler than that. I think I was just tired in the real way, finally. Not the wired, managed exhaustion of someone running from something, but the clean tiredness of a person who has put something down. In the morning, he made coffee. Strong, no apology for it. We sat at the kitchen table, and I looked out the window at the snow, an inch, maybe two, on the ground, and I thought about my mother's house waiting for me. All those rooms, all that accumulated life, and for the first time, it didn't feel like a task on a list. It felt like a place I was going to say goodbye. There's a difference. He drove me back to the airport. We didn't talk much. The silence was the same as the night before, comfortable, undemanding. When he pulled up to the departures curb, he reached into the duffel bag in the back seat and handed me the last granola bar. I laughed. "For the flight," he said. "I'm going to need your address," I said, "to send these back." He didn't have paper. Neither did I. He looked around the car and then tore a strip off the granola bar wrapper, the one I'd eaten the night before, still sitting in the center console, and wrote his address on it in ballpoint pen. Neat handwriting, the kind that doesn't rush. I still have it. It's in the small zip pocket of the carry-on where the bluebird used to be. I went home to my mother's house 2 days later. I walked in and it smelled like her. Some combination of the soap she used and the wood of the floors, and something else I can't name, something just hers, and I stood in the hallway for a long time before I could move. But I moved. I opened the kitchen cabinet and I looked at the masking tape. Ruth's mugs, do not use. Her handwriting, slightly slanted, the U in mugs bigger than the other letters for no reason. I left the tape there. The estate attorney didn't need to know. I changed mom, do not delete, to mom, always. I don't know if that's the right thing, but it felt like something she would have approved of. The week after I got home, I sent Daniel a photo of the house, front porch, the door she'd painted blue 3 years ago because she said the original color was aggressively beige. He responded 2 hours later with a photo of his tree. The bluebird was still on it, slightly left of middle. The light on the branch was good. I booked a flight back in February, not to the airport, to his town. I want to be careful about how I tell the next part because it isn't a love story. Or maybe it is, but not the kind that arrives in a rush. It's the slower kind. The kind that starts with two people who both know what January can do to a house, and who recognize something in each other in a half-empty airport on Christmas Eve, and who decided, each separately and then together, that being recognized was worth more than being careful. The ornament is on my tree now, his address is in my phone, and this is the part that still surprises me, I am not white-knuckling through my life anymore. I didn't know that was possible until a stranger handed me a phone charger and pointed at an outlet and didn't need anything from me in return. Some people don't rescue you. They just make a little room. And sometimes, that is the whole thing. If there's someone in your life who made room for you when you had nowhere to be, a stranger, a neighbor, someone you almost didn't let in, tell me about them in the comments. Their name doesn't have to be Daniel. The airport doesn't have to be real. Just the feeling of it. Just that one moment when someone didn't fix anything. They just stayed. Thank you for spending Christmas Eve with me tonight. I know you could have been anywhere, and you were here, in this story, all the way to the end. That means more than you know. If this found you at a hard time, I hope you'll carry something a little lighter tonight. Like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one. And wherever you are, Merry Christmas. I mean that in the plainest, truest way I know how.